The Madden Tournament Shooting. On August 26, 2018, dozens of gamers gathered at the GLHF Game Bar in Jacksonville Landing, Florida, for a Madden NFL 19 regional qualifier. The tournament offered prize money and a path to the finals in Las Vegas. Around 1:30 p.m., 24-year-old David Katz arrived at the venue. He had traveled from Baltimore to compete. Earlier rounds had not gone well for him. Security footage showed him losing matches and appearing increasingly frustrated. He left the main gaming area and walked to his car. Minutes later, he returned carrying a handgun. Without warning, he opened fire on the players. Two players, 22-year-old Eli Clayton and 28-year-old Taylor Robertson, were killed instantly. 11 others were wounded. Katz then turned the gun on himself. Police arrived within minutes. The shooting shocked the esports community worldwide and remains the deadliest attack at a competitive gaming event in United States history. The Korean Training House Tragedy. On March 15, 2016, a 17-year-old League of Legends trainee lived in a team house in Seoul, South Korea. The teenager had recently joined a minor league team, hoping to reach the professional level. Teammates later said he practiced 14 to 16 hours daily, often skipping meals. On the evening of March 15th, other players noticed he had not left his room all day. At 11 p.m., a teammate knocked on his door to invite him for dinner. There was no response. Growing concerned, they opened the door and found him slumped in his gaming chair, headset still on. His screen showed a paused match. They shook his shoulder, but he was cold to the touch. Emergency services were called immediately. Paramedics pronounced him dead at the scene. An autopsy revealed he had suffered a blood clot that traveled to his lungs, a condition linked to prolonged sitting and poor circulation. The death sparked widespread concern in South Korea about the physical toll of professional esports training on young. The Dota 2 Internet Cafe Death. On January 22, 2015, a 23-year-old man entered an internet cafe in Taipei, Taiwan. He was a competitive Dota 2 player preparing for an upcoming regional tournament. He ordered energy drinks, sat at his usual terminal, and logged into the game. 9 hours passed, then 12. Staff checked on him periodically, but he waved them away. By the second day, other customers grew concerned. He had barely eaten and had only left his seat twice. His posture was hunched, his face pale, but his fingers never stopped moving. At 6 a.m. on the third day, another player noticed he had stopped playing mid-match. His character stood motionless on screen. Staff rushed over and found him unconscious, slumped forward. An ambulance arrived quickly, but paramedics could not revive him. He was declared dead at the hospital. Medical examiners determined he had died from cardiac arrest caused by exhaustion and severe dehydration after more than 40 hours of continuous gaming. The CSGO practice death. On July 8, 2014 in Moscow, Russia, a 19-year-old Counter-Strike player was training for a major European qualifier. Friends later said he had become obsessive about improving his aim and reaction time, spending entire nights at his computer. On the evening of July the 8th, his mother heard him shouting commands into his headset. She brought him food, but he barely touched it. At 4 a.m., she woke to silence. She went to check on him and found him collapsed on the floor beside his gaming chair. His computer was still running. She called for an ambulance immediately. Paramedics arrived within 10 minutes, but he showed no vital signs. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. Doctors said he had suffered sudden cardiac arrest, likely triggered by extreme fatigue, stress, and lack of sleep over several consecutive days. His death circulated widely in Russian gaming communities as a cautionary tale about the dangers of overtraining. The PUBG Tournament Preparation Incident. On November 3, 2018, a 16-year-old boy in Mumbai, India, was practicing for a local PUBG mobile tournament. He told friends he would practice all night to improve his ranking. His family said he locked himself in his room at 8 p.m. and played continuously on his phone. At 2 a.m., his younger brother heard a loud thud. He knocked on the door but received no answer. Growing worried, he woke their parents. They forced the door open and found the teenager on the floor, phone still in his hand, the game still running. They called for help immediately. Paramedics arrived 20 minutes later, but the boy was unresponsive. He was declared dead on arrival at the hospital. Medical staff said he had suffered a stroke, possibly triggered by prolonged stress, dehydration, and lack of sleep. The incident received significant coverage in Indian media and contributed to growing calls for restrictions on mobile gaming among minors. The Brazilian team house fire. On September 12, 2019, 6 members of an Overwatch team lived together in a rented house in São Paulo, Brazil. On the evening of September 12th, the team was conducting a late-night practice session. 5 players sat in the main gaming room wearing headset. Around 1 a.m., an electrical fire started in the kitchen. The flame spread quickly through the wooden structure. Thick smoke filled the house within minutes. The players downstairs, wearing noise-canceling headsets, did not immediately notice. By the time they smelled smoke, the fire had blocked the main exit. They tried to escape through windows, but metal security bars prevented them. Neighbors called the fire department immediately. Firefighters arrived within 10 minutes and broke through the bars. They pulled 4 players from the house, all suffering from severe smoke inhalation. 2 were already unconscious. Despite immediate medical treatment, one 21-year-old player died at the scene. The second died in the hospital 3 hours later. The tragedy led to stricter safety regulations for team houses across the country. The fighting game tournament death. On June 18, 2017, a 26-year-old professional Street Fighter player competed at a major tournament in Osaka, Japan. Throughout the day, he advanced through the brackets, playing match after match without significant breaks. Spectators noticed he looked tired and was sweating heavily. By early evening, he reached the semifinals. During the match, witnesses said his hands began to shake. He paused briefly, rubbing his chest, but continued playing. Midway through the final round, he suddenly stopped pressing buttons. His character stood still while his opponent finished the match. Then, he collapsed sideways off his chair onto the floor. Tournament staff rushed over immediately. A doctor attending the event began performing CPR. An ambulance arrived quickly, but the player showed no pulse. He was transported to a hospital where doctors attempted to resuscitate him for over an hour. He was pronounced dead that evening. Medical examiners determined he had suffered a heart attack brought on by extreme stress, dehydration, and underlying cardiac issues. The tournament was suspended immediately. The Hearthstone charity stream death. On December 14, 2016, a 29-year-old Hearthstone player in Taipei, Taiwan began a 24-hour charity live stream. He hoped to raise money for a local children's hospital. His stream started at noon. By midnight, he had raised over $3,000. Friends watching online noticed he was drinking multiple energy drinks per hour and had not eaten a proper meal. They sent messages urging him to take a break, but he insisted on continuing. As dawn approached, his speech became slurred and his gameplay sloppy. At 9 a.m., and with only 3 hours remaining, he suddenly went silent mid-sentence. His hands dropped from his keyboard. His camera showed him slumped in his chair, eyes closed. Chat erupted with alarm. One viewer who knew his address called local emergency services. Paramedics arrived at his apartment 15 minutes later and found him unconscious at his desk. They attempted resuscitation, but he was unresponsive. He was declared dead at the apartment. Doctors said he had suffered cardiac arrest triggered by extreme exhaustion, excessive caffeine consumption, and dehydration. His death was live-streamed to hundreds of viewers. The Chinese team bus crash. On March 22, 2017, a professional League of Legends team from Chengdu, China traveled by bus to Shanghai for a major tour. The team included 6 players, 2 coaches, and a manager. Around 2 p.m., the bus was traveling on a mountain highway in Hubei province. Players were sleeping or watching game replays. Witnesses in other vehicles said the bus suddenly swerved. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. The bus crossed into the opposite lane and collided head-on with a truck carrying construction material. The impact was devastating. Emergency services were called immediately. Ambulances and fire trucks arrived within 20 minutes. Rescue workers spent hours cutting through the wreckage. 3 players were killed instantly in the crash. 2 coaches died from their injuries before reaching the hospital. 4 others were critically injured. Only 2 team members survived without serious injuries. The team withdrew from the tournament, and organizers held a memorial service. The tragedy led to stricter regulations about professional esports team travel. The Philippine esports event Stampede. On May 11, 2019, thousands gathered for a major esports festival at a convention center in Manila, Philippines. Organizers expected around 5,000 attendees, but over 10,000 showed up. When organizers announced a limited giveaway of gaming peripherals, fans rushed toward the distribution area. The narrow corridors could not handle the surge. People at the front were crushed against barriers. Those behind continued pushing forward, unaware of the danger. Several attendees were trampled as the mass moved forward. Event staff called for emergency services immediately. Police and paramedics arrived within minutes. They pulled 17 people from the crowd. 15 were treated at the scene for minor injuries. 2 young men, aged 19 and 21, were unconscious and not breathing. Despite resuscitation efforts, both were pronounced dead within the hour. Authorities shut down the event immediately. The organizers faced charges for negligence and failure to implement proper crowd control measures. The FIFA murder case. On October 7, 2018, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, 2 friends in their early 20s regularly played FIFA together at a local gaming cafe. On that evening, they sat side by side playing a competitive match. Witnesses said the argument began over a penalty call in the game. One accused the other of cheating. Insults were exchanged. Staff intervened and asked them to calm down. They appeared to settle and continued playing, but the hostility lingered. After finishing the match, both left the cafe. 2 blocks away, the argument escalated into a physical confrontation. One man pushed the other. The aggressor pulled a knife from his pocket. Bystanders shouted for them to stop, but he lunged forward and stabbed his friend multiple times in the chest and stomach. The victim collapsed onto the pavement, bleeding heavily. Witnesses called for help immediately. An ambulance arrived within 10 minutes, but the victim had lost too much blood. He was declared dead at the scene. Police arrested the attacker nearby. He confessed to the killing and was later sentenced to 18 years in prison. The prize money robbery murder. On August 19, 2020, a 24-year-old professional Counter-Strike player in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, won a significant tournament, earning $15,000 in prize money. He collected the cash immediately and posted about his victory on social media. That night, as he walked home from a celebration dinner, 2 men on a motorcycle approached him on a quiet street. Security footage showed the men blocking his path and demanding his belongings. Before the player could hand anything over, one of the robbers fired a gun. The player fell to the ground. The robbers grabbed his bag and fled. Residents rushed out after hearing the gunshot and called for emergency services. Paramedics arrived quickly, but the player had been shot in the chest. They transported him to the nearest hospital where trauma surgeons worked to save him. Despite their efforts, he died on the operating table. Police determined the robbers had likely seen his online posts about winning. 2 suspects were arrested 3 weeks later and charged with armed robbery and murder. The LAN party cardiac arrest. On April 3, 2015, a 32-year-old Swedish gamer attended DreamHack in Jönköping, Sweden. The man set up his gaming station on Friday afternoon and began playing immediately. By Saturday evening, he had been gaming for nearly 30 hours straight. Other attendees noticed he was consuming energy drinks constantly and had not slept. Around 9 p.m. and during an intense match, he suddenly stopped typing and clutched his chest. His face turned pale. A friend asked if he was okay. He mumbled something incoherent and then collapsed forward onto his keyboard. Medical staff on site arrived within seconds. They began CPR and used a defibrillator while calling for an ambulance. Paramedics arrived within minutes and continued resuscitation efforts. Despite intensive treatment, he was pronounced dead 2 hours later. Doctors determined he had suffered a massive heart attack, likely triggered by exhaustion, stress, and excessive caffeine consumption. DreamHack suspended activities briefly and held a moment of silence. The streaming marathon death. On February 28, 2017, a 35-year-old American Twitch streamer in Virginia attempted a 72-hour gaming marathon to celebrate reaching 10,000 followers. The stream began Friday morning with him appearing energetic. By Saturday afternoon, viewers noticed he looked exhausted, but he insisted on continuing. Chat became increasingly concerned. On Sunday morning, approaching the 60-hour mark, his speech became slurred. He struggled to focus and repeatedly lost matches. Several viewers threatened to call police if he did not rest. He grew irritated and muted chat. Around 2 p.m. when his body suddenly convulsed, he fell from his chair. The camera angle shifted, showing only the ceiling, but audio captured him making choking sound. Multiple viewers immediately contacted local emergency services. Police and paramedics arrived at his home 12 minutes later. They found him on the floor having a seizure. They stabilized him and transported him to the hospital. Doctors discovered he had suffered a stroke caused by severe dehydration, sleep deprivation, and excessive stimulant consumption. Despite treatment, brain damage was extensive. He died 3 days later without regaining consciousness. The PUBG Internet Cafe Stabbing. On June 15, 2019, in Delhi, India, 2 men in their 20s sat in an internet cafe playing PUBG Mobile. That afternoon during a squad match, they argued over strategy. One blamed the other for a death in the game. The accused player responded angrily, and the argument grew louder. The cafe manager asked them to quiet down. They appeared to calm down and continued playing, but resentment lingered. The match ended in defeat, and the argument reignited. They stood up, shouting at each other. One man shoved the other, who fell against a table. Staff moved to separate them, but before they could intervene, the aggressor pulled a folding knife from his pocket. He lunged forward and stabbed the other man once in the abdomen. The victim collapsed onto the floor, blood spreading rapidly. The cafe manager called police and ambulance. The attacker fled immediately. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes, but the victim had lost substantial blood. They rushed him to a hospital where surgeons operated to repair internal damage. Despite their efforts, he died during surgery. Police arrested the attacker at his home later that evening. He was charged with murder. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for similar ones and feel free to drop suggestions for the next video in the comments.